For years, tennis scouts agreed on one thing about Alex Eala: the talent was obvious, the baseline game was elite, and the competitive fire was impossible to teach, but one shot kept holding everything back. Her serve. Opponents knew it. Coaches saw it. Analysts highlighted it in nearly every scouting report. It gave returners too many comfortable looks and kept a dangerous all-around game from becoming complete. But now, the very shot once considered her biggest weakness is becoming one of the most fascinating stories on the women's tour. So, what changed? And why are the hard courts, the same surface where Eala first introduced herself to the world, becoming the stage where that transformation may finally be revealed? This is not simply a story about adding a few miles per hour to a serve. It is about a young player taking the weakness everybody can see, working on it while the entire tennis world watches, and attempting to turn it into the next weapon of a career that has already made history. Before dramatic nights at Wimbledon pushed Alex Eala into global headlines, hard courts had already shaped some of the most important moments of her professional journey. Go back to August 2025 at Flushing Meadows. In the opening round of the US Open, Eala found herself trailing Denmark's Clara Tauson 5-1 in the deciding set. On paper, the match looked practically over. Tauson was ranked, in form, and only a few games away from closing the door. Eala refused to let that happen. She fought her way back, point by point, and completed a comeback that still sounds almost unbelievable. With that victory, she became the first player representing the Philippines to win a Grand Slam main draw singles match during the Open era. It was not a gift from an easy draw. It was not the result of a lucky bounce. It was hardcourt tennis at its toughest: heavy hitting, extended rallies, relentless pressure and baseline exchanges where neither player was willing to give an inch. Against a dangerous, in-form opponent on one of the biggest stages in sports, Eala proved that she could survive that battle and win it. The signs had already appeared earlier in 2025. At the Miami Open, Eala stormed all the way to the semifinals, producing a breakthrough run that included a stunning victory over Iga Swiatek, who was ranked number 2 in the world at the time. That result made the tennis world sit up and pay attention. Eala was no longer being discussed as simply a successful junior prospect. She had defeated one of the best players alive on one of the most competitive surfaces in the game. By the time more casual fans discovered her through Wimbledon, the people who had followed her closely already understood something important: hard courts had always felt like home. Her aggressive baseline style fit the surface perfectly. She could rip the ball off both sides, redirect pace, defend through long exchanges and suddenly turn defense into offense. She competed with intensity and looked comfortable standing toe-to-toe with powerful hitters. But no matter how much praise appeared in those scouting reports, the analysis usually ended with the same warning. The serve remained a problem. It was not a small technical detail. It was widely viewed as the biggest liability in her game. During the previous season, her first serve often stayed below 90 miles per hour. At the highest level of women's tennis, that is more than a missed opportunity. It gives aggressive returners time to move forward, attack the ball and take control before the rally has even truly begun. When Eala lost matches, the trail often led back to service games she could not protect as consistently as her opponents. Her ground game could challenge elite players, but her serve sometimes forced her to fight uphill almost every time she stepped behind the baseline. That gap became the central question surrounding her future. How high could she climb with an elite baseline game but an exploitable serve? There was no hiding the issue. It did not require a coach studying slow-motion video to notice it. The weakness appeared in real time, match after match. One detailed analysis described the serve as her greatest weakness, period. Even as other areas improved, that one limitation remained stubbornly visible. A first serve consistently landing below 90 miles per hour does not merely reduce the number of aces or free points. It can hand control of the rally to the returner. On a tour filled with players who can dominate service games with power and precision, Eala sometimes looked like she was entering the fight with one hand lowered. Many of her matches in 2025 followed a familiar pattern. She created problems on return. She extended sets through determination, intelligent shot selection and fearless ball striking. But her own service games remained the most vulnerable portion of each set. The conclusion from analysts was almost universal: improve the serve, and her ceiling rises dramatically. Leave it unchanged, and she could become the kind of player capable of producing major upsets without consistently staying among the sport's top tier. That was the accepted story heading into 2026, gifted, dangerous, and already historic, but still incomplete. Then, barely a month into the new season, the conversation began to change. By early February 2026, analysts were noticing measurable improvement in the exact area that had been criticized the most. One breakdown reported that arguably her biggest flaw had shown marked progress only 1 month into the season, with signs that further improvement was likely. Changes to serve mechanics do not appear overnight by accident. The motion involves timing, coordination, balance, shoulder rotation, leg drive, ball toss, and confidence. Visible improvement suggests deliberate, highly focused training, not a player simply hoping her natural talent will continue covering the same weakness forever. The results supported what analysts were seeing. At Indian Wells, Eala reached the round of 16 before losing to Linda Neskova. During that run, she also produced a performance against world number 4 Coco Gauff that helped reframe how people talked about her. It was not treated like another cute underdog moment or a moral victory. It was viewed as evidence that her tennis belonged at that level. The discussion was shifting. Alex Eala was no longer merely a promising player trying to keep up with established stars. She was increasingly being recognized as a legitimate competitor capable of pushing them. The next stretch added more proof. At the Linz Open, she opened with a convincing victory over Austria's Julia Grabher before facing former French Open champion Jelena Ostapenko in a tightly contested match. Once again, Eala looked increasingly comfortable sharing the court with a Grand Slam champion. She did not appear overwhelmed by the name across the net or intimidated by the occasion. Tournament by tournament, the old narrative was being rewritten. The aggressive baseline game was still there. The courage was still there. But the weakness opponents once expected to exploit was no longer remaining completely unchanged. Still, not every expert believed the transformation was finished. Former US Open finalist Greg Rusedski watched Eala closely during her Wimbledon run. After her campaign ended against Jasmine Paolini, he discussed her development on his off-court podcast and made it clear that more power could still be added to the serve. He also pointed out the strapping visible around her elbow, describing it as somewhat concerning. That detail matters. Even during a career-best Grand Slam performance, there were signs that the body was absorbing the stress of emotion still being refined. Tape around the elbow can be a small but revealing reminder that technical development often creates new physical demands. Rusedski remained blunt about the serve, calling it noticeably weak while praising almost everything else about Eala's tennis. He admired her return game, her ground strokes, and her refusal to make excuses. He even compared her competitive mentality to Rafael Nadal's. His solution was specific. Rusedski pointed to Novak Djokovic's early career, noting that Djokovic's serve in his early 20s was not yet the weapon it would eventually become. The message was not that Eala's serve could never improve. It was the opposite. Major transformation was possible, but it required time, repetition, and physical development. According to Rusedski, Eala already understood how to vary the serve. What she still needed was greater accuracy and more power, qualities he believed would come with time. That is a very different diagnosis from saying the shot is fundamentally broken. It suggests the knowledge is already present while the execution and physical tools are still catching up. Rusedski also offered an interesting opinion about her best surface. Despite the success Eala had already produced at Miami and the US Open, he suggested grass could eventually become her strongest surface because her existing skills translated so effectively there, even without a fully weaponized serve. That is what makes this story more complicated and more compelling. The improvement is real, but the work is not finished. Alex Eala is not a completed product being unveiled to the world. She is a player developing in public, adjusting one of the most complicated motions in tennis while continuing to compete against the best players on the planet. So why does the hardcourt chapter matter so much now? Because hardcourts are where her rise began, and they may be where the next major test, including matchups against power players such as Elena Rybakina, reveals how far the serve has truly come. Eala's return to the United States for a dedicated hardcourt training block was not just another stop on the calendar. It was a deliberate return to the surface where she first proved she could compete with the elite. This time, she arrived with a service motion that had clearly evolved from the days when her first delivery regularly remained below 90 miles per hour. The same surface that produced her first Grand Slam main draw victory and her Miami semifinal breakthrough is now the proving ground. Can those technical improvements survive against deep, fully loaded fields? Her seeded entry into the Mubadala City DC Open already carries meaning. Players are not seeded because of hype, social media attention, or a compelling storyline. Seeding reflects rankings earned through accumulated results. Eala put herself in that position through what she accomplished on court. Her approach remains grounded. She has described her professional journey as a continuous process, a philosophy that fits everything we have seen from her development. There has been no shortcut and no overnight miracle. Her progress has arrived step by step, tournament by tournament, and adjustment by adjustment. Even Rosetsky acknowledged that most of Eala's professional success had come on hard courts. That fact forms the foundation of this entire story. She is not discovering this surface for the first time or hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. She is returning to the environment where her aggressive game has always made the most sense, now with a materially improved version of the one-shot critics kept circling. Add together the Indian Wells run, the battle with Goff, the matches against Grand Slam champions, and the serve improvements noticed early in 2026, and the picture becomes clearer. This hardcourt swing is not an experiment. It is the next data point in a pattern that has been building since Miami and Flushing Meadows placed her on the global map. Should the serve continue improving at the pace already documented, the hard courts may reveal that progress more clearly than anywhere else. This was always a surface designed for Eala's speed, timing, aggression, and baseline courage. It was simply waiting for one missing piece. Now the biggest question remains: has Alex Eala truly solved the weakness that followed her through the early stages of her career, or are we only watching the middle chapter of a longer transformation that may not reach its full conclusion until she returns to Flushing Meadows? Share your take in the comments. And to follow this hardcourt journey match by match all the way to the US Open, subscribe to Tennis Diaries. Every serve, every statistic, and every step forward will tell us whether the change is temporary or whether Alex Eala has finally turned her greatest weakness into the weapon that takes her to the next level.